You're listening to the Common Fan Podcast, a Husker football podcast for the common fan by the common fan.
Welcome back to the Common Fan Podcast. I am TJ Burkle, as always, alongside Matty Owens Sr. and Geoff in Lincoln. Hey, get to the Common Fan website, www.commonfan.co. Subscribe on YouTube, like this episode, sign up for the newsletter, follow the social media accounts, and generally keep up with all the fun and frivolity of the Common Fans. Also, Common Fans, you know, game day is not complete without delicious Nebraska beef. And if you really want to upgrade your spread this season, Oak Barn Beef has got you covered. They ship premium Nebraska-raised beef straight from their family farm to your front door. Steaks, roasts, ground beef, you name it. Order online at oakbarnbeef.com. That's oakbarnbeef.com, and make every tailgate or watch party a little more memorable. Friend of the program, Evan Bland, is back with us. Evan, how are you, sir?
Doing great. I love the intro, that little ditty, that little tune. I feel like I could play that while I'm like shopping in the Haymarket downtown Lincoln, you know,
Over and over.
You're just kind of like walking down the street and checking things out. Like it's a really good, like casual vibe. So I'm in the zone now because of that thing. Let's do this.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, for listeners who don't know, we used to add the music after the fact, but we've incorporated into our sort of recording system pattern, whatever you want to call it here. So guests are hearing it right before we record. So, Evan, I know as a regular listener, you've heard it many times, obviously, certainly. No, that's good. That's good to hear. So, Evan, first of all, it's just great to have you back on the program.
Yes.
Another view from the Bland stands, we'll call this one.
Bye week from the Bland stands.
Bye week from the Bland.
That's right.
There you go.
And we're recording this before the weekend, but it'll come out on Monday. So Common Fans, there won't be any references to whatever great and crazy college football happenings take place over the weekend. But Evan, we mostly want to focus this episode on the ways in which this Nebraska football team is better than in Matt Rule's first 2 years, because I think they are better in a lot of ways, and they have taken steps forward, and I think that's worth acknowledging, especially after we were a little salty after we recorded on Saturday night. We recorded a few hours. We recorded a few hours after the loss to Michigan. Jeff had a few drinks, if you can believe it or not.
No, I had
lots of anger going on there. I think one thing we're going to get to the positive and mostly focus on the positive, but I was thinking about this after the fact, and I don't know that in my anger I articulated it particularly well when we recorded after the Michigan game. I think one thing that struck me, Evan, as a point of concern was how badly Nebraska got beat on both lines of scrimmage. And I think the reason that was really striking is because that's not fixable overnight, right? It's really like line of scrimmage type issues are not fixable overnight. It's not like you can kind of scheme around it, but it's not something you can fix overnight. Whereas you can get a couple receivers in the portal or something, or change up your scheme mid-season or something, and hope other things can get better. But line of scrimmage is not one of those things. And then two, like, again, I know a lot of turnover on defense. We lost Nash and Ty. We lost Jamari Butler. We lost John Bullock. We lost Tony White. So that's a lot of transition for those guys on that side of the ball. But it feels like the defense has taken a step back, particularly the front seven, particularly the line of scrimmage. Again, at least by the eye test. And so I'd love to get your reaction to that, because I think the point I made on Saturday when we recorded was, this is not good enough in year 3. There are things that are a lot better. The offense is better. The special teams is better. The defense is better in some ways. But I think it's concerning and rules teams have always been physical. So I don't think it's an effort thing or even a physicality thing. But I just love to kind of get your take on this because going into Big Ten play, it's great that we're good at stopping the pass, but we got to stop a lot of run first teams. And coming up next, Aiden Childs is a running quarterback for Michigan State. So all that's a lot of me babbling. What do you think about all that?
I think it's all fair. I mean, like, I agree. Watching the game, and I think the numbers bear it out, that Michigan dominated the line of scrimmage on both sides. The 7 sacks on Raiola and then the 3 long touchdown runs. I'm of the mind that the struggles from the offensive line are more Michigan specific thing than they are the O-line's regressed or whatever. Like, I think they're going to be able to run with Emmett Johnson. I think they're going to be able to protect Raiola better than they did. I just think Michigan's front seven's full of guys you're going to see on Sundays each year or two. That's probably going to be the toughest front you're going to see, in my opinion, this season. The defensive side is more problematic for sure. And, it doesn't help that was probably question mark number one all offseason was, what's that going to look like when you lose the guys that you did? You named them, TJ, that are either in pro ball or playing at LSU in Jamari Butler's case, and they didn't add that impact guy or guys out of the portal. They have some younger guys that are coming along. I still think Riley Van Poppel can be a really good player in his career, maybe this year, but this is his first full season doing this at the college level, and so it's a tough spot because you have a lot of guys. I kind of call it an ensemble cast a little bit. You have a lot of guys who were rotational players last year who were being asked to have a bigger role. Elijah Judy's one of those guys. Cam Lenhart's one of those guys. They've had their moments, but it just hasn't been consistent enough. And you're trying to bring along younger guys like Keona Davis along the way. And Gabe Moore was a transfer who's looked good when he's been in there, but he's been kind of hurt a little bit off and on. And so I think you're right. Like, the personnel is what it is. You can tweak that a little bit. Maybe a freshman like Cade Petshot gets a little bit more run. He's flashed certainly in a couple of games, but I kind of go back to what John Butler, the defensive coordinator, said a week ago, which was it's not as much about maybe effort and strength as it is the game plan and having what he called a pointed approach. So you're going to have to go into a game saying, are we going to play these guys straight up, whoever the opponent is? Are we going to do some stunts, which is when you rotate some defensive linemen and they go into different gaps in an effort to confuse opposing offensive linemen? Obviously you have to be lined up correctly. That was not the case on one of those long Michigan runs that they had in the second half. So I think that all kind of plays into it. You're going to refine your personnel a little bit. You're going to need to continue to figure out schematically what you want to do. Like, you think back to Tony White's defenses the last 2 years, one thing you always heard from opposing offenses, especially linemen, was how confusing it was. You never knew where the pressure was going to come from. It could be a linebacker. It could be a defensive lineman who moves over 2 gaps, and you just haven't heard that quite yet. And maybe that's because the pieces that Nebraska has aren't quite as versatile. Maybe that's John Butler still settling in. Maybe it's some of these other things. But I think that'll be one of the key things I'll be watching coming out of the bye into that Michigan State game is how does Nebraska adjust that area specifically? Because, again, you can't do it from a personnel standpoint. It's going to be about what's the strategy, what's the scheme for any given week.
Well said, Evan. Well, we talked about the trenches, and TJ kind of mentioned a little bit of what's better, but in year 3 of Matt Rule, Evan, what has Nebraska improved on? What are the ways that they've gotten better in your eyes?
Yeah, I mean, Dylan Raiola's better for sure. A lot of the numbers that you can put out there, he's completing 75% of his passes. Just the one giveaway on that little tipped interception against Michigan. He's got the pocket presence he even avoided a couple sacks against Michigan and made plays with his legs, which you haven't seen a ton of until this year. So I think you feel really good about where that's going. Certainly they've upgraded at the skill spots. Dane Key is good. Ja'Cory Barney is in the middle of a full-fledged breakout, it would appear, from what he's done early on. Isaiah Hunter. So I think they've upgraded the skill players as well. The secondary is really good. You know, your top, your first or second in the nation and pass efficiency defense and yards allowed per game through the air. And then I think, you know, special teams has been really quietly pretty good. I mean, Archie Wilson had a good game against Michigan. He flipped the field a few times. They found a kicker, and Kyle Cunanan, who missed his first field goal, but he made a couple others and has been really solid. So, like, that's a group all of a sudden that's actually really helping. I'm going to have something out here this week for Omaha.com. I was looking at average starting field position, and a lot of this is based on special teams. You know, kickoffs, kickoff returns, punt returns. How does that look? Right now, they're 18th in the country relative to like their offense, where it starts relative to the opposing offense. So they're plus 7.3 yards. So on average, they're having a better starting field position of 7.3 yards. The last time they finished positive in starting field position was 2016.
Wow.
So like that tells you a ton right there that's a group suddenly that's actually helping Nebraska win games. It's been a long time since that's been the case. Usually you're trying to just avoid abject disaster. And so I think that's an area absolutely that they can build on as well. And I kind of mentioned the O-line too. I think that's going to be a more trustworthy group than it showed against Michigan. You're going to have to figure out the tackle spot a little bit. I think they'd like to get Elijah Pritchett in there at some point. You might just have to stomach the false starts that come with that. But physically, like, he's a guy who can hold up an edge as well as anybody on their roster. So it's definitely better. Like, you think about 2 years ago when Michigan comes into Lincoln and it's 90 degrees and the Huskers were lucky to not get shut out and it wasn't close. Like, this game was much closer. And yeah, the result wasn't what you wanted. And I think the expectation was this was Nebraska's arrival. They were going to announce to the world they're going to beat a top 25 team. They're going to beat a brand name opponent on CBS in the afternoon. It was going to be a glorious revelation of Matt Rule's year 3. And it didn't happen. But it doesn't mean that they're not better, and it doesn't mean that they're not continuing to ascend. So I think there's a lot to be optimistic about and things that are going to help them win games here in the month of October.
This is why we have you on, Evan. You make us feel good. You make us feel good. That's what's happening here. You mentioned
Evan Blaine chicken soup for the soul here today.
Make the common fans feel good again.
Yes. Take the hat. Make the hat.
You mentioned Dylan. Certainly was a bright spot, but I won't kid you. If you listen to the last episode, I was even a little critical of certain things. And after going back and rewatching some stuff, I will admit he played awesome. You know what I mean? And I think it's just because as common fans, you're not even really looking at the stats per se. You're just looking at the scoreboard. We didn't win the game. And I think a lot of common fans out there in their minds, they're like, if he's going to be the person we want him to be, he should have been able to lead us back to win that game. And he didn't do it. So we need to be hypercritical of him. But when you talk about evading sacks, yeah, he got sacked a few times, but he made some huge plays. I mean, he had over 300 yards pass. He had 3 touchdowns. And a lot of people just don't look at those stats. They just view it as, we lost the game, he's not good. And I think even national pundits have kind of been on his case a lot from what I've noticed. TJ, I'm not even going to get into your little riffs on the Common Fan X account. You're going back and forth with people, but I can tell that.
Hey, don't reveal who that was, Jeff. Don't reveal who was at the controls of the Twitter account for that.
But I agree. Like, a lot of people are on his case, and I think unfairly, ranking him a lot lower, like not even in their like top 20 quarterbacks for the year. There's still those lame Patrick Mahomes comparisons, which I admit some of that was brought on by Dylan himself just by, dressing and looking like him. But do you think the coverage of Dylan and where he's at so far in his career at Nebraska nationally is just kind of getting out of control? Just seems like people are all over his case unfairly, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think to some extent he's a victim of expectations, maybe. And again, I think it goes back to the Michigan game where a lot of people, I thought Nebraska was going to win going in. I thought it was going to be a close game and they were going to find a way, and it didn't happen. It wasn't Dylan Raiola's fault that it didn't happen, but I think if they had won that game, that sort of would validate his ascension to that next level of college football quarterback. And so, like if he had the numbers that he had and he was playing at Georgia where he was previously committed, or he was playing at Ohio State, you can bet he'd be a top 10, top 5 quarterback. So I think some of that's a reminder that like the guys that get the best individual accolades are the guys who are on winning teams. And so you don't get the benefit of the doubt when you're on Nebraska that hasn't won at a high level in a long time. It doesn't mean that they won't. Doesn't mean that Raiola is not a good player. I mean, you look at, I think I was reading last week, I think it was a CBS article about Raiola and Bryce Underwood from Michigan. Like if there were no eligibility rules in terms of when you could go to the draft, like those are two guys who are top 5 quarterback prospects in the NFL right now. So I think pro scouts understand that. I think some of the noise that you hear, again, is probably from people in college football that were anticipating Nebraska to take that step against Michigan. It doesn't happen. And now, you have a month, and the next month you're not going to, I think, convince a lot of people with the games that you have ahead. Like these are opponents coming up, Michigan State and Maryland and Minnesota and Northwestern, that like if Nebraska wins, it's not going to move the needle much. But I think these are games, if you're really the player that people think you are, then Raiola is going to continue to perform well. And then that could set up another sort of prove it game when USC comes to town to start the month of November. So the stage is very much there. There's 2/3 of this regular season still to go. A lot of minds can still change. And I think he's playing very well.
I think so. One thing, TJ, I was going to say, the nitpicky things they do, like talking about, he's flexing. Oh, that's a Patrick Mahomes thing. Look at him. He's trying to be Patrick Mahomes. I flex at the beginning of every episode. Does that make me Patrick Mahomes? Does that make me? No, it does not. It does not make me Patrick Mahomes.
You are decidedly not Patrick Mahomes, Jeff.
Can't confirm.
Okay, so Dylan right now is the only FBS quarterback in the country with 1,000+ passing yards, 100+ completions, 10+ passing touchdowns on a 75% or better completion percentage. Only quarterback in the country. And so I'm going to step back a minute. I think honestly, I think the Nebraska fan base is spoiled with the kind of coverage we get from the likes of the Omaha World Herald, some of the radio guys in town, the Journal Star. Like we get tons of Husker football coverage, and it's very well done. I do think, to Jeff's point, certain Husker fans and certain Husker podcast Twitter accounts have been fighting with folks like Tom Fernelli and Ari Wasserman on Twitter and calling out some of their criticisms. It's hard. Let's put it this way. Again, Evan, so I started with the caveat that we respect what you do and your publication. Like media companies are for-profit entities, and they thrive on clicks. And it's really hard. Like if somebody if Andy, what's his name from On3, Andy Staples wants to put out there that Nebraska is not a blue blood, 1 million Husker fans on Twitter are going to jump into that fight. And people, and then other fan bases are going to jump in and rub it in Nebraska's nose because they know that Nebraska's good for engagement, right? Mm-hmm. It's called engagement farming. Engagement farming, everyone. I learned that term last year. And so similarly, it's really hard to trust either these guys, and not everyone's an X's and O's expert. And, we do a whole podcast on Nebraska football, and none of us are coaches or former players or experts, but it's really hard to trust that when these guys go on their podcasts or they go on their, write their articles and they say, they say critical things of Dylan Raiola, or Fornelli said he's being held back because he doesn't use his lower half as much. What the hell does that mean?
Is he a quarterback guru?
Yeah, right. And just look at the numbers. And so I don't think, to your point, Evan, I think if he was at Ohio State or Georgia with the same numbers, he might be in the Heisman conversation, to be honest. But let's even concede, okay, maybe he's not in the Heisman conversation, but he's in a top 10 or top 15 QBs in the country conversation, especially looking at how some guys that people thought would be excellent this year really haven't been. So I don't love jumping to a conspiracy theory, but it's hard not to think that they know this is going to get clicks. They know even Twitter fights are good for business. for some of these guys. And it's hard not to think there's a little bit of strategy behind poking the bear that is the Nebraska fan base.
Yeah, it's true for sure. Sometimes headlines make the difference. Sometimes saying something and putting it out there in a fan base like Nebraska's makes the difference for sure. And it's just like all you can do if you're Nebraska is win games and try to turn it around. Like stuff like this doesn't move the needle much at Ohio State or at Georgia or Penn State right now because they're winning games. And so like that's something I think Nebraska's gotten caught up in a lot over the years. It's like when you're not winning, then all the little stuff becomes big stuff. I mean, and whether you're talking about like tunnel walk music or black shirts or what's the jersey count, like all that stuff, it becomes much less important when you're winning games. That's just sort of around the orbit of the moment. And so like, especially when you lose a game now, like Nebraska just did, the little stuff seems bigger. Why isn't Dylan Raiola throwing deeper more often? Why isn't he using his legs to run more? He's not really a mobile quarterback, but he's awfully good at being a pro style quarterback. So like stuff like that, it's just kind of a reminder that winning cures all. That this is part of the uphill climb that Nebraska has. Yeah, they were a legendary program 30 years ago, and they were nationally relevant 25 years ago. And it's been hard.
10 to 15 years ago, Evan. 10 years ago.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you know what I'm saying? Like you have to build it back. And I think this is just a reminder of that. Like you're just not going to get the benefit of the doubt. And it shows up in a lot of these little side fighting, tiffs that go on online.
You know what? It's the college football industrial complex trying to keep us down.
We haven't mentioned them in a while. That's a good point.
They're still out there, Jeff. Don't let their
they surely have their long, gangly, disgusting fingers stirring some sort of pot
meddling
with Dylan Raiola quarterback rankings thing.
No doubt.
Yeah, meddling.
Let me tell you, Tom Fornelli and Ari Wasserman are on the take with the college football industrial complex.
Yes, they are.
All right. They are in the tank. They're agents of the CFIC. We all know it.
Yeah.
Sorry, Matt, go ahead. I think Matt had something.
I just wonder, and I'm throwing this out to Evan, but you other two knuckleheads as well. Do we think that winning more will, and especially winning, maybe beating a ranked opponent, do we think that winning will stop the Mahomes comparisons? Like, what is going to stop that? Like, to me, it's so played out. I mean, we're almost at October, and people are still talking about it. Like, this is carried over from last year. Like, when will it stop? I just can't wait for the Mahomes stuff to stop. And I get, there's these things here and there. And for the record, also, he's not the first quarterback other than Mahomes to throw a sidearm pass. Like, give me a break. So I'm just like, and it's not really a question for Evan, but it's like, can we just make it stop? Is that what it's gonna take? Is beating, a USC at home if they're ranked kind of deal for people to like, okay, wait a minute, maybe he's just good in his own right. We can stop him the home stuff.
Well, Evan, I want to hear your take on this, but I like this is another example of the engagement farming because, and this is like, even like, I remember I probably could go find it, but like the Fox Sports, one of the two major networks that covers most of college football games, they'll put pictures on Twitter of like, they're not like saying anything controversial. They'll just say Dylan Raiola doing his best Mahomes or like whatever, knowing they know they're stirring the pot when they do that. So even like major networks, even major outlets, ESPN, others will do this. And he looks like Patrick Mahomes. That's not his fault. And I guess you could say to some extent, maybe he copies Mahomes' mannerisms. And it's like, is the kid even 20 yet? Sure, he's a teenager. He looks up to the greatest quarterback of this generation. Like everybody's done it since forever. Everybody copied Michael Jordan for a generation, right? So that's played out. But then to the point I think Jeff made, now it's everything. Like somebody showed a side-by-side. They were both wearing sunglasses. The sunglasses didn't look anything remotely alike. The haircuts didn't look remotely alike. The dress, and it was like Dylan Raiola and doing his best Patrick Mahomes walking into this game or whatever. And it's like, no, a million players flex every weekend and a million players jump up and down on the sidelines. Like it's gone way overboard. Sorry, I'm clearly worked up about this. Evan, would love to hear your response to this.
Well, I feel like I might be a little bit out of touch on this and maybe it's because I'm at the games and I'm not watching the broadcasts, but I kind of, before hearing this conversation and like the online tiffs yesterday, like I kind of felt like it had been played out and it was fading a little bit. And last year, certainly he was the new guy. He was the 5-star.
Yeah.
He leaned into it. Like last year, there were a lot of parallels. I kind of felt like just the style of play that he has is different. He's really embraced sort of being the point guard of the offense, being the distributor. Like he's not rolling around back there improvising. He's getting the ball out to guys in space. And like that's what the coaches have talked about for months is, as they like to say, put the ball in play. Get the completions and then let your skill guys do something with it. And he's getting the completions, to your point, TJ, about his 75% completion percentage. And some of the incompletions haven't really been his fault too. He could easily be completing 80% of his passes. And so like I think his style of play is different. Yeah, the appearances and the jersey numbers and all, the fact that they've trained together a little bit is interesting, is cool, but I think he's definitely becoming his own guy. Like he's gotten a little bit better as a runner. But he still really hasn't had a non-awkward slide when he's pulled the ball down and run. So like maybe that's something still that's coming, but I think he's gotten better this year. I kind of mentioned he's slimmed down. His ability, like his pocket awareness was good last year. I think it's better this year. I think there are going to be games in the future, possibly related to when Nebraska gets its running game going a little bit, where those play action sequences are really going to bite in terms of the defense coming down and them and him being able to find somebody over the top. So I think his best football is ahead of him. Maybe I just think the Mahomes thing is it's just kind of a lazy thing to fall back on. If you don't really follow the team, if you're dropping in for a week to cover them, if you say, oh, what do you know about Dylan Raiola to somebody on the East Coast? Oh yeah, the guy who looks like, Patrick. Okay. So like, I don't know. I don't put a ton of stock into it. I think people that follow the team that root for Dylan know that he's becoming his own guy. And he's one of the most talented quarterbacks Nebraska's had in a long time. So it's really exciting to see still how Nebraska's going to use him this year and where they can go.
Does that help, TJ? Did that get that out of your system? Do you need a cigarette? You doing okay?
Know, Jeff, actually, cigarette sounds great right now. Thank you. Yes. No, I don't smoke, Jeff. You know that. Don't try to loop me into your habits, Jeffrey. Okay. So Evan, you mentioned the next 4 games. We've got Michigan State at home, at Maryland. Then, of course, after having to travel all the way to the East Coast, we got to come back home and then go to Minnesota the following Friday night. Big Ten / college football industrial complex would never do that to certain schools. Let's be clear. But at Maryland, at Minnesota, and then Northwestern at home. You said it. The way you said it is spot on. No one's really going to care if Nebraska wins those games. And in fact, Nebraska fans will care. But I mean, like the sort of national perception won't change much. And for at least for 2 or 3 of them, I think the expectation is Nebraska will win those games. So, but I want to talk about how important they are because they have the potential to define the season in a bad way. If we lose to Northwestern, what everyone perceives to be one of the worst teams in the Big Ten, or we lose to a Michigan State team because we can't stop Aiden Childs or whatever. I mean, Maryland, I think coming into the year was expected to be really not very good. They're pretty good so far, it appears, or they've played well so far. Minnesota is always a challenge. So I guess how important are these next 4 games, and what would constitute a successful stretch of games for the Huskers in these 4 games?
I mean, it feels to me like 3-1 would be reasonable in October. I think they're going to be favorites probably against everybody with the exception of Minnesota. And that's one that's given the Huskers trouble through the years, the style of play and just when you catch the Gophers. I think a lot of that stuff plays into it. Not that they can't win that game, but I think they'll be underdogs for it. So if you go 3-1 in October, then again, kind of like we were saying earlier, that earns you the right to have a big game against USC where you can announce yourself. And so I guess one thing I try to look at, especially these last couple of seasons, is what tangible evidence is there that the program's moving forward. Not just vibes, not just you know, podcasts and things that Nebraska does a really good job of doing to hype up fans, but just tangible on-field results. Like a year ago, the two things that showed it to me were you end the Wisconsin losing streak and you go to a bowl game. This year, it still could be you beat a ranked team. That's something that's that they've been on the schneid for 9 years now. And I think it also could be you take care of the teams that you're supposed to take care of. I mean, they beat Cincinnati, 101 score game. I think this next month is another chance to do that. If you really are a program on the ascent that belongs in that upper quarter of the Big Ten, then these are games that you need to win. You need to beat Michigan State. You need to go to Maryland where they're not going to have a significant home field advantage and win. You need to take care of Northwestern at home. And so for all the struggles Nebraska's had through the years, one of them has been that inconsistency where you just know they're going to drop one of those games, right? If this is Nebraska 2021 or 2019 or whatever, they're not going 3-1 in October. Maybe they're going 2-2. And so you're going to get your chance in November at the big ones, certainly with USC and Penn State and potentially Iowa. But October is the month where you earn that. And then you say, okay, it's almost like you're playing a video game and you've got the final boss coming up, but you have to beat the other bosses to get there. This is kind of what that next month's like to me. You got to earn the right to level up and have those big games in November.
Video game references, TJ.
Yeah,
Adult video game references. You see that? You understand what he's saying there? He's talking about there's these bosses at the end of each level that you have to beat to advance to the next level. Just so you know, I just got done. All right, we're going to remove Jeff from the stage for a minute.
He was about to tell us about his video games, TJ.
Yeah. I was going to I know Mattio's got a question next, but I was going to jump in and then Jeff made me totally I had something to add to that, but Jeff made me totally forget it. So
it's called Star Wars Fallen Order. It's a great
All right, thanks, Jeff. All
right.
What the heck was I going to say? Something about completely lost it. Go ahead, Mattio.
Well, I would agree, Evan. Those next few games are important. We get to the final boss. So many of us Husker fans have heard this stat for way too long. We're now 0 for our last 28 against ranked opponents. Most likely, we will face a couple more this year. Most likely USC and Penn State. Of those two, Evan, which I guess, do you like our chances to win one of those? I'm assuming it would, for me, it would say probably USC since it's at home, but just wanted to get, I guess, your take on if you think we can not necessarily beat one of those two, but get a ranked win this season.
Yeah, I mean, it'll probably be those two, and you never know. I mean, if Iowa goes on a streak here, they could be ranked potentially by the end of November. So it could be that one. But between USC and Penn State, yeah, I mean, I think USC for the reasons that you said. I mean, it's at home. Matt Rule has been rooting for months for there to be snow and a lot of cold when the LA boys come to town and see what that's like. I think just watching some of their games, they've been a little bit better than maybe what the general perception was of them before the season. They look pretty good against Michigan State. They've got a dude at quarterback and they're going to be able to move the ball and score points. But I think Nebraska can move the ball and score points against that defense too. So, yeah, I mean, I think that'll come down to it. And Penn State's one of those teams. Yeah, they're a CFP contender for sure. But I don't know that their style of play is such that they're going to run away and bury you. Like, it feels like that's going to be a game that's also in doubt, certainly into the second half, probably into the fourth quarter. So, I don't think you can rule any of that out. A lot of it to me still goes back to what's Nebraska's run defense look like in a month. Because if it's what it was against Michigan, then I don't know that it's a huge issue against USC necessarily, because that's not really their DNA. But certainly Penn State is going to hammer that that weakness and let until Nebraska proves that it can stop it and can be something different. So I think that's the interesting part is some of that discussion's about the opponent, but I think a lot of it's about Nebraska too, and saying that they have the ability, they have the talent. Can you shore some things up? Can you figure out a little bit more specifically what you want to do on defense, who you trust in terms of personnel? And if they're a team that is really what people think, Nebraska, then it's a group that's going to get better as the season goes on. That hasn't been the case in Lincoln very much in the last 20 years. They tend to fade and cool off with the weather. So we'll see if that can change. If they can get better and compete and win some of these big games in November, especially, I think that too could be another tangible sign that things are going in the right direction, even if the record isn't as gaudy as maybe Matt Rule year 3 records at other schools.
And there's a scenario where we don't get that ranked win this year and still end up 9-3. And I think we should all be very, very pleased with that. And we'll get the ranked win. Yeah, we'd like that streak to end, but there's a very real scenario where we don't get that ranked win and end up 9-3, and I would be very, very happy with that. I'll just put that out there.
Well, on that note, Matty-O, as you guys know, I was questioning the meaning of life on Saturday night. I've now got us winning the next 4, just so you know, including Minnesota.
Good.
We
were all worried about you. We were all really worried about you.
We're going to be 7-1 going into the USC game, and then we got UCLA the week after that. That's obviously another win. And then, at Penn State.
Never say obviously.
Iowa. I would do that. So anyway, sorry. I think Geoff had a question, but I just want to. Common fans can now relax and in the knowledge that the Huskers are going to run off. Yeah. Well, also that the Huskers are going to win 4 in a row.
We were just worried about you and your general mental state.
Yes, that's.
Let me ask you guys something. Can I ask you guys something? I'm curious your thoughts. So, because I think this is an interesting topic, this idea that they could go 9-3 and not have that big win. Would you, if you could choose, would you choose 9-3 with no big ranked win, or 8-4 and they beat either USC or Penn State, but they also lose one to, Maryland or Michigan State? Do you value the overall record more, or that singular moment? That singular game, maybe that's.
I think I would take 8-4 with the win over the ranked team, assuming we also beat Iowa.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. There's a lot of qualifiers here.
Qualifiers.
You'll trade a win as long as one of those wins is like a breakthrough ranked win.
Yeah.
Well, because those get more attention nationally.
Yeah.
And if we do care a little bit about the national perception of Nebraska, right?
I care a lot.
A little bit. Yeah.
I'm a shallow, hollow person.
If you beat Penn State at Happy Valley, that's an attention grabber, right?
Yeah.
The thing that I don't want to give up for that is I really want to beat Minnesota. We've been losing to Minnesota too much, and I really want to beat Iowa. So if that's at the expense of losing one of those, I really don't know what my choice would be, because I really don't want to lose to Minnesota or Iowa anymore. So that's a really tough one.
Well, let's say you assume a loss in that scenario. You assume a loss to either USC or Penn State, but then you have to beat one of them in that scenario. So where do the 2 other losses come from? That's the hard one.
Because then we're losing to some maybe 2 teams that two teams that we should have beaten. That's
the idea. Yeah.
I don't like that.
I'm going with the 9-3. All right. I'm make this clear. I'm going with the better record. All right. That stays in line with the Matt Rule year 3 leap. 7-5 to 8-4 is not a leap, quote unquote, to me. I want to see a leap in that record. So I'm going 9-3.
Well, let me put it this way. I think many Husker fans, myself, and I include myself in this, will be disappointed at 7-5. Yeah. I think most Husker fans will be elated at 9-3, regardless of how it looks.
Yeah.
And I think the majority of Husker fans will be pretty happy with 8-4 and basically say, we got 2 wins better this year. If there's a win over a USC or Penn State in there, I do think that makes a difference though. Right. Yeah. I think that's hey, we went 8-4 and we beat USC and Iowa. Everyone's pretty thrilled about, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Something like that. People are pretty thrilled about that. If we go 8-4 and we lose to Michigan and USC and Penn State and either Iowa or Minnesota, then
piss
everybody's
people
kind of
off.
like, yeah, we got a little better, sure.
Yeah.
But it's just all this context matters, Evan. That's why that's a great question. But
It's 9-3. It's 9-3, damn it.
And I ask it too because I think one of the things that really frustrates Nebraska is if they haven't had that big moment. Like every week, you can tune into college football and see someone storming the field somewhere with a big win.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so, like, why do we like sports? To me, one of the things is so you remember where you were when this thing happened or that thing happened. Everyone knows where they were when Ndamukong Suh brought back that ball against Colorado and scored a touchdown, or when Alex Henry hit the 56-yard kick. So, like, when's the last time Nebraska had a moment where you were just like, I remember where I was when that happened? I mean, Colorado last year, I guess, kind of. Beating a bad Wisconsin team last year, okay. But, like, beating a ranked team like that, like, that's something to me that people would remember and could say, oh, yeah, I was there. I saw that, whatever. I was at a party. That was great.
And the most Nebraska thing ever is that the answer might be Michigan State in 2015. And to me, that was an amazing game and an amazing win. And to me, it'll always be colored by the fact that we didn't even go 6-6 and make a bowl game that year.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like, okay, great. But like,
Yeah.
who cares? Like, it would have been awesome if we had then beat Iowa and gone 6-6 instead of 5-7 and gone to a bowl game. But anyway, but that feels like to your point, Evan, like, even when we've had a couple of those moments in recent years, it's sort of colored by, then this happened,
Right. Yeah. Yep. Which, by the way, before we move on to my last question, I guess don't rule like a Penn State. I'm just saying this right. It's going to sound crazy. We'll learn a little bit more about Penn State after this weekend. I am curious to see what they look like against Oregon, because we may be singing a different tune next week, schedule wise, if they play or if they get their doors blown off. But that's for another day. Michigan State coming up, Evan.
Dynamite drop in, Jeffrey.
Catch.
Fly ball.
Don't caught. I don't know much about Michigan State, admittedly, but it does sound like they have a mobile quarterback, somebody that can run. What do you know about Michigan State in this game coming up, Evan? Is there anything that we need to be on the lookout for? Anything we need to be concerned about? Or how are we looking against them? How do we match up against them?
I mean, I think Nebraska's going to be favored. I haven't seen a line on it. Maybe there's one, but I would expect it to be around a touchdown, would be my uneducated guess. But I mean, Childs is where you start, I think, with the mobile quarterback piece. And generally, it was encouraging, I think, how Nebraska handled Underwood last week. He had the one touchdown run, but for the most part, I think if you're the Huskers, you take a similar performance against Childs there. I know that their pass rush is not very good, Michigan State, so you would think that would be a game where Raiola will have a chance to operate in the pocket, and I think probably get the running game going a little bit more, certainly, than they could with Michigan too. So, it's a like war for baseball. It's like the wins above replacement for Michigan State. It is kind of like right at zero, in my opinion. Like that's a standard Big Ten team that has some talent. Old Nebraska friend Alante Brown is still a Spartan. That's kind of fun.
How?
I know he's I think he's in his 7th year now, but he's still there. He's a special teams guy.
So have the grandkids come and watch practice. I mean, that guy's played college football since we were in high school.
When you see him back on kickoffs, now you won't have to be shocked that it is the same guy.
Wow.
I remember being sad to lose him. Sorry, go ahead, Evan.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, it's an interesting program. Michigan State early in the tenure of Jonathan Smith, like he had good things going at Oregon State. I think that they'll eventually get there, but it's just a program that's sort of like Nebraska. It's about a year behind in terms of its rebuild and kind of finding its identity. So, I think Nebraska absolutely should be favored in that game, and they just need to go out and prove it. Like, again, that's a game that they would have lost or would lose a lot in recent years. Can you go out and take care of business?
Yep. Michigan State will also be coming off a bye week like the Huskers are as well. So,
right.
the college football industrial complex doing us no favors with the scheduling, of course.
Really trying hard this year. Really.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. All right, Evan, what are you doing for the bye weekend?
Watching a lot of football, like you mentioned. Oregon, Penn State's going to be awesome. I'm really fascinated to watch Indiana, Iowa, and see what that's like. Like
Yeah.
what Indiana just did to Illinois. Does that translate to Iowa, or do the Hawkeyes do what they do and make this thing a low scoring, nail biter late? Like that's a
Grind it
really
out.
fast. USC, Illinois is interesting to me. Like this is a weekend where you learn a lot about a lot of teams in the Big Ten. So would I rather be covering a game? Yeah, generally. But if I'm not, having this kind of slate to just kind of be able to take it in and watch it and not have to, do a lot on deadline, I'm going to take it. So I'm going to try to be a fan this weekend and watch a bunch of college football and just enjoy it.
You don't have any yard work to do? Nothing. You got to mow the lawn? Nothing like that?
I'd probably mow the lawn. I think we are going to hit our first a pumpkin patch on Friday afternoon or to start the weekend. So
there we go.
Nothing says pumpkin patch like 80-degree weather, but I'll try to hit that a little bit and spend some time with family, and it's all good. Like I said, I'm a big proponent of 2 bye weeks in the year, and Nebraska had the Thursday night game. They're gonna have that Friday night game against Minnesota, so there are actually quite a few weekends where you can just sit back and relax and watch a bunch of other games.
So just looking at Michigan State's schedule, they beat Boston College, but it was 42-40. So they gave up 40 points to BC. They beat Youngstown State, but they gave up 24 points there. And then, of course, in the loss to USC, they gave up 45 points. So even if Childs gets loose a couple times, I like our chances of Dana plus Dylan being able to maybe put up some video.
Dial it up.
Shootout.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, agreed.
Evan, since you brought it up real quick, I think Indiana is going to boat race at Iowa. Maybe I'm wrong on that. What do you think of Mr. Signetti? Obviously, he has taken a perennial doormat and turned them into a very good team. But last year, you could argue like all of their wins came against, anytime they've had to play a ranked team or a good team,
Notre Dame,
they get smoked, right? Or they lose, I should say. Now they did just beat number 9
Notre Dame,
Illinois. Shut up, Jeff. They did just beat number 9 Illinois. We'll see if Illinois is a top 25 team when the season is all said and done. What do you think about Mr. Signetti? What do you think about what's going on in Indiana? Is it for real? Maybe this is a dumb question because you can only play who's in front of you, and the results are certainly there the last year plus. But what do you think about that whole thing?
Seems real. I mean, sure seemed real last week. Seemed real when Nebraska played there last year. I think this Indiana team has a chance to be better than last year's, which is kind of shocking when you think about it. And, again, like Iowa was a great litmus test for that program because Iowa was going to do Iowa and try to slow the game down and be really fundamentally sound. And can Indiana do what it did? Like if it does it again, I don't see how you can make the argument that they're a mirage. Like they have the skill talent. They have the swagger, the belief. Matt Rule likes to say sometimes, like, you got to act like a champion before you are one. I think they've got that part figured out. Like they just carry themselves like they know that they're going to win. And I've kind of noticed, Nebraska fans maybe turning a wandering eye that direction this week when you're like, God darn, look how quickly Indiana turned around and they got ranked and they did this stuff. And so
yes,
it is I can't pretend to tell you like exactly how he's done it because I don't really know. I mean, they've gone to the portal some and they have an identity, but like his persona, his belief is a part of that, but you can't win on that alone. Like you got to have the other stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know what, like, if you're another program trying to find the guy, like, I don't know what lessons you necessarily take from Indiana hiring Signetti, but he's fun. He's great for the sport. I love listening to his press conferences. He's brash. He backs it up. And I mean, to his immense credit, watching Indiana football has now become appointment viewing on weeks like this when it really never has been before. So really interested to see where that goes the rest of the year, starting this weekend.
I actually hate him for all the reasons you just said. But anyway, another sneaky good game this weekend. Evan, sorry if you mentioned this already, is USC Illinois.
Yeah.
And I feel like that'll tell everyone was really high on Illinois going into the season. We saw what Indiana did to them. I think this game will tell us a lot, maybe about both teams. So it'll be interesting.
Sure.
All right, Matt, Jeff, anything else for our dear friend of the program, Evan Bland?
Yes. I wanted to ask Evan. And I think we asked Brian Christopherson, we asked VC about this, but with the change to Aramark for the concessions, have you been okay with the food in the press box this season? We talked, those the longtime listeners know we used to bring this up with you on the Bland Stands last season. Give us a little insight on the food in the press box this season.
I have had no issues with it. I mean, who am I to complain anyway? Like, they're providing free food on game day, so I'm going to be thankful no matter what it is. But it's been good for sure. They've had corn every week, which they'd never really had. Like, good, like, I don't know if you guys have been to a game or tried the corn on the cob yet, but it's that kind of corn that's just almost been lopped right off, which is tasty. They've had
like street corn, like Mexican street corn, kind of.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it's got a little seasoning to it for sure.
Jeff's favorite.
Yeah, elote.
Yum.
Macaroni. Halftime they set out some popcorn and cookies, which is kind of what it's been. And they actually, the big internal scuttlebutt lately has been the post game. They've gone back to Valentino's. So the first game or so it was Aramark pizza, and they made the switch, so it's back to Val's.
Oh, wow. Oh boy.
But no, it's fine. It's like the worst thing on a game day is to like miss your chance at eating food, and then you're hungry for like 4 hours while you're working and doing interviews and things. So try to bank it early, I guess, and then just not worry about it the rest of the way. But no, it's great. They treat everyone up there, above and beyond, and so like for example, there are places where you can go in the Big Ten where you're like, I'm just going to go down to the concessions and get something because like the offerings are not
really
what interests me.
Well, it sounds like at Penn State they just bring in food from somebody's house and like
BC did say it's like a potluck.
We always called it the potluck from hell at Penn State. I'll be really curious because the last time that we went out there was 2017. That was when Saquon Barkley was there and Nebraska was a huge underdog.
Generally,
we haven't been out there since then. So I'll be really curious to see if that's still the operation. If there's going to be a Jell-O next to a lasagna, next to an enchilada, or what that's going to look like. It's endearing in its own very unique way.
The potluck from hell. Oh my God!
These cheesy potatoes.
Oh, well, that's a great note to end on. Friend of the program, Evan Bland, thanks so much for joining us. Always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you, Evan,
and chat with you.
Appreciate you guys. It's like a reunion here. This is great.
Yeah, absolutely. This episode will be out on Monday of Michigan State week. And I think this is going to be probably our only episode of the week, and then we'll be back at you after the Michigan State game. So, hey, Common fans, be kind to each other. We'll be back at you soon. In the meantime, as always, GBR for life.
Holy moly! Man, woman, and child did that. Put them in the aisles.
And Nebraska takes the lead. And the national championship is Nebraska.